Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to my channel. YouTube family and friends, YouTubies, all the YouTube people out there. Excuse me. So, I'm currently working on an illustration. I'm working on this cartoon actually. It's a cartoon that I came up with in 2005 or something, 2004. So, it's old, but I really wanted to bring it back to life and give it a story and just really elaborate on this because doing cartoons and illustrations in that way is really fun for me. Comics, that's what I need to say. And there's potential that this could be something more, but for now I just want to create this, build the story of this character and expand on that and really bring life to this character because I think it's a good one. So I'll be working on that while I do my storytelling today. So I wanted to do another Awakening into the Void episode. So I think this is episode 16. Hopefully I'm correct on that. Where I last left off, I was deciding to move to where my dad passed away, where he last lived, where my stepmom was living, where my sister was living. And I wanted to move with them just to be with them so we could like process the passing and transition together. And, a lot of things were transpiring that they needed help with, and I just wanted to be there for them because there really wasn't anyone else that was going to be there. So I didn't really have shit going on at the time anyway, so it was just it all kind of worked out for the best. So I moved out to where they were at, and as soon as I moved out there was just a bunch of bullshit going on from the get. So my dad, before he passed away, was trying to buy this property from this family, and it was a trust-based deal. He wanted to pay cash. He was working in a cash-based business, so he made instruments and drums and stuff and worked at festivals and stuff like that. And so it was just for him in his mind, he's kind of got the hustler mentality, so he just didn't want to have to deal with like paperwork and real estate agents and all of that kind of stuff. So he figured, I can just make a deal with his family and just give them huge chunks of cash at a time, and then we can the faster to be able to own this property. Well, unfortunately, as he was getting sick, he had to make smaller cash payments because he had to focus on healing and focus on paying for treatment or whatever he needed at the time. And he was like worried about finances and stuff like that. So while being sick and worrying about finances is just a bad combination. So he definitely met his demise, among other things that triggered his demise. But when it's our time, it's our time. We cannot control that, honestly. So he passed away, and I didn't notice until I was told afterwards. And I slightly recall these people, these lurkers that were coming about during his memorial, and they were just like this one particular guy. Like, I just did not like his vibe at all. He was a total creep, a total freaking weirdo, just this short freaking slime ball, just very impressed with himself. That's what I call people who have this kind of vibe, like they think they're the shit for whatever fucking reason. That's the kind of energy that this guy exuded. And I need to change the volume on this. So I did peep him out, but I didn't know what connection he had to the owner of the property, or like why he was lurking or what he was even doing there in the first place. So he was irrelevant as far as I was concerned. But when I came back, it turns out that he was the father of the kid, of the woman who owned the property. And the reason he was lurking around was because him and her, even though they weren't together anymore, they had every intent of repossessing that property. And while I was gone, so after the memorial, I went back home. And in that time that I was back home, the original owner of the property decided to drop an illegal or a fake, eviction notice on my stepmom. It's like these motherfuckers had the nerve to collect so much cash from my family. My dad did so many fucking repairs on that property only to turn around and try to snatch the property back. And this was a real, like, I feel, I know now that I have a very innocent soul, or a very, I'm perturbed at the fucking nerve of some people and how dark and terrible some fucking people can be, just beyond greedy and selfish. It's just like, but I had to learn that this is what the kind of shit that death brings about. It brings about vultures, death, weddings, births bring about the worst in some people. And these people they weren't our family, so they didn't owe us shit, and because my dad wanted to make this deal under the table, it was to their benefit, so they could, keep all that cash and get the property back and do what they willed with it. So it was just a shit situation. So because of that eviction notice, and even though it wasn't legal, it definitely, my stepmom was nervous and didn't know what to do. So the one thing she did decide to do was to, start preparing to leave the property, basically. So it was a good thing that I came, because I was able to kind of help out with that and just be of assistance, and we could kind of just be of support for each other in that process, because it was a mind fuck, and it was just a lot to take on emotionally and mentally. And so my sister at the time too was just going through a lot. She was a teenager, and being a teenager, processing that, and the hormones of that evolution, and then processing the loss of a parental figure who, she was a lot closer to our dad than I was. Like I never really had a close relationship to him, because he was never really close with his kids to begin with. Like he just didn't know how to connect on a deep level. And that was just due to his own stuff, But I, of course I loved him and felt still connected to him in a very deep way. It was more in a spiritual sense than a sense of like, oh yeah, he was my best friend. For my sister, like they definitely had a closer bond in that way. So she was having a really rough time with it. And I know, at the time, and even before then, she felt more understood by our dad than her mom. So just losing him was just a big shock to her sister, all of us, but definitely for her and my brother as well. Like I have another sibling. So it's just too many transitions going on at once. And then the fact that it's like they just got settled in this house, and my dad's such a vagabond renegade. Like they're constantly moving all the time. Like my whole life we've been moving. And, once they moved there, like I didn't move with them until he passed away. But I've adopted that lifestyle. I still haven't settled anywhere yet. But they were finally going to settle at that place. So it's like he passes away, and it's like, oh, you got to move again, So just the upheaval, and him not being around, not having that, masculine energy, and just the he was definitely the leader of the pack, and so I know that my stepmom just felt kind of lost at that point because he was so, it was always kind of his way and his direction and everything like that. And she was very much going with his journey. And so, yeah, we had to get up out of this place. And to top it off, so these, not only did these people take all that money cash for this house and just decide to fuck it off, and I don't even know if they even wanted to kind of formulate a deal with my stepmom so she could possibly pay off the property. I think they just assumed that she wouldn't be able to and just decided to try to evict her. And so that it was just fucked from the beginning, because it's like she could have probably, bought it, paid them off whatever the rest, but they're just nasty motherfuckers, and they had their own opportunistic mindset that, oh, we can do more with this, with this property, with these two houses, so we just need to get those people off the property. That's probably the mindset that they had. So we had to leave, and it was a big deal because there was two houses worth of stuff. My dad was a percussionist, and he made drums and instruments and stuff like that, and he had drums and just a lot of equipment and a lot of things to sort through. It was just so much. And being that we had to switch properties, it was like, where the heck are we going to go that's going to have enough room to house all of this stuff? Two houses worth of stuff. So it was stressful. And we had only so much time to, like, I think we stayed on the property for about another 6 or 7 months. And the owners had the nerve to want to try to ask for rent, and my stepmom's like, we're not paying fucking rent. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're basically stealing the property back. Like, where's all the money, that we paid? And for you to try to act like, oh, that's rent money. Like, they were literally paying cash to buy this property. So it was just scheming MFers. So we had to prepare to leave. So that was just our goal for those 6 months. And I was dealing with my own feelings and emotions at the time and processing the whole situation. I was still dating this guy who was just no good for me. I mean, he was okay. He wasn't, the worst person I've ever been with, but he just was not connected with his own emotions, or we didn't see each other like this. Like, we were just not connected in that way. So he couldn't support me in the way that I needed. And he was also, we were in different states at the time, so it just wasn't a good situation for me. But I definitely was still distracted in that relationship. And he came out to visit once or twice. I think maybe once. Like, I went to visit him before moving out there to Michigan, and then he came to visit at one point when he was on his way back to where he lived. So trying to juggle that, and I was still, I was in my mid-20s, so it was just a lot to process. And I was hanging on to that relationship because, it was like a support system, or a distraction, actually, to be honest. But it was just toxic. It wasn't good for me. Like, I wouldn't know, I would have to ask him what he felt how I was for him, because I'm not going to say it's all him, but I was young. I was a lot younger than him, like 8 or 9 years younger than him. So that to me is an issue. Thinking back on it, he was way too old for me. And especially for me at that age, because I was still just so ignorant about relationships and stuff like that. But what took precedence was trying to get off of that property and trying to find a new place to live, which my stepmom was on the task because it was initially her and my sister that she had to, find all of that stuff for. So eventually, before I even get to that, like living on the property, so, the people who own the property, they decided that they were going to move in, so it was the lady. It was okay. It's a crazy story. Or a crazy situation. So the lady who was taking charge of this whole situation, who she was the owner, or the sister of the owner, but she was in charge of the property, and he was like thirsty for cash. Like he was just, these people are just so seemingly irresponsible and just fucking off money. Who knows what the hell they were doing, but I think they're all just like really greedy ass people, so they just thought like, oh, well, we can get the property back and rent it out or do whatever they're going to do. And so she moved in her ex, who was the one lurking around trying to see if he could get the property back. She moved him into the house that my dad lived in. And I would be lying if I wasn't praying that he would do something to like destroy that house while they were living there, like burn it to the ground or something. I'm like, well, wait until we leave, but once we leave, like, destroy it. And that's probably bad juju to wish bad things upon people like that, but no matter how, poorly people treat you, we just have to trust that the universe, God, will serve them, what they like to serve out to others. So it's just unnecessary to put that energy out into the world. But it just sucked that this fool lived in the house that my dad was living at. And at the time, like, I moved into this Airstream trailer that my dad had. I wasn't, and it was just nice because I had my own space. But this fool would just be around and always try to like make eye contact with me and try to talk to me or befriend me and shit, and I'm just like, get the fuck away. Like, we are not friends, we're never gonna be friends. Like, back the fuck up. Like, stay the fuck away from me, stay away from my family, stay away from us. Like, you are not welcome. Just because you live here and we live here, like, we're on our way out, so the least you could do is leave us the fuck alone. So, grimy motherfucker, can't stand him. If I see that fool, like, I swear to God, and he's still to this day just a piece of shit, grimy ass motherfucker. Anyway, so we stayed there for about 6 months, and I had some just interesting occurrences. Like, I didn't feel too many, like paranormal things on the property, but I had one dream where, staying in the trailer, and it was a very like lucid dream, and I don't know if I was like outside of the trailer. Like, I feel like in my dream I was outside of the trailer laying on the ground, and there was a group of natives standing around me, and they were like pulling stuff out of me energetically, and I was just like on the ground shaking and all this stuff. And so it was like some sort of like spiritual clearing of some sort. And I remember the people, the indigenous people, like, they were very etheric. Like, they were almost like transparent, so they weren't even in my dream, they weren't even like fully people, or they were, they were extra dimensional beings or something like that. But it was just an interesting dream that I had there, and I feel like I was still dealing with dark energies within me, that I didn't know how to confront, that I didn't know how to clear for myself. So I felt like it was just some sort of gifting, like a something that was lurking in that property. It wasn't scary, so it was a helpful thing that I needed. But it was really interesting. I feel like a lot of my experiences that I have are mostly in my dream state, or often in my dream state. So I just wanted to share that interesting dream that I had. But anyway, we were continuing to embark on the moving process and trying to find a place that would be decent enough to move to. And at that point, I had gotten a job, and it was, in town, relatively close. And we found one property that was pretty big. It was a decent size, but it wasn't close to town. And I didn't have a vehicle, and it just would have been kind of inconvenient for my stepmom to have to drive me to work all the time. It was not a practical place to live. Although in hindsight, I'm like, maybe it would have been the best situation to live at that place. But again, hindsight is 2020. So we ended up finding a place. She ended up finding a place closer in town. It was actually relatively close to where the house was, where we were at. So the moving process wasn't going to be too tough. So it was not the biggest house. The garage wasn't very big, and to be moving two households full of stuff, two households, mind you, that had two garages and two basements. So two houses, two garages, two basements, and my dad built a trailer, like a shed on the property too, which was full of instruments. So two houses, two basements, two garages, and a shed, a big shed full of stuff that we had to move. And mind you, we did do some sales and stuff like that, but it was still a lot. And the house that we found, I mean, it was a decent enough place, even though it was small, but it was in town. So it's just, the house that we lived at was in town, but it was just kind of isolated from others. So you didn't really have any neighbors around, which is nice. But this house we were moving to is just there's neighbors all around. It's just very, everybody all up in your shit. So it wasn't the most ideal situation, but that's where we were headed next. And I'm going to end the story here. It wasn't the most exciting part of the story, but I mean, still a lot of material. But I'll pick back up where I left off, moving into this crazy house. I mean, it wasn't that crazy, but it definitely was not. It was not the house for us. There was definitely some energetic disagreements, and after all that we experienced, being kicked off of a property that was intended to be like a forever home, a forever space for the family, to then move again, to be met with other disastrous events, was just it was a lot. So I'll be sharing that in the next video. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you again on the next one. Have a wonderful day, night, or whatever time it is for you. Goodbye.